Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another deep dive, well, one day deep dive. I, of course, am Matthew, and today I am really just grateful to bring a good friend of mine on the show today. I have known Bruce for several years now. We met back in Kauai in 2015, and it's been a very insightful journey ever since. Every conversation I've had with him has always been revelatory in one way or another. And I've really appreciated just having him in my life. And I'm really excited to share with all of you today and just see where this goes. We don't have a particular intention for the show today. There's no particular thing that we'd like to share, nothing that's come up. So it's just going to be a conversation and we'll see where it goes. It may be super short, it may be long. We may sit here in silence for a couple of hours and just, hold space. Um, but yeah, with that, I'd just like to bring Bruce on and say hi. Hi.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for coming. I really, really appreciate it. And like I said, I really feel like just starting with what's present and giving you a chance to just speak and share where you're at right now and what's going on, and if anything in particular comes up for you in this moment.
Okay. Well, for me, there's quite a lot going on in world events and very little going on otherwise. Um, what's going on in the world to me is worth exploring. I feel that the shakeup that's happening now has been pending for a very long time, and yeah, my heart goes out to everyone who's going through tough times today.
Yeah, I am. I'm right in the thick of it too, as you know, like with the campaign. Today is Juneteenth, the official end of slavery here in the United States. And there's a big demonstration planned downtown in Knoxville that Blair will be going to. And if I get a chance, I might be there later tonight as well. Um, I absolutely feel you on the like that feeling that it's been building for a long time now. Um, and in some ways, I'm actually grateful that it's happening. It feels almost like a relief to like just get it out in the open almost. And at the same time, it's been heartbreaking watching everything that's happening that it had to get so bad, like so painful that people just finally stood up and said enough. I was wondering,
Yeah, it's been. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you'd share your take on it, like what do you see as this is to you? I know that's a weird way to ask that question, but that's kind of how it came out. So,
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I feel that some background might be in order then. I don't see the world the same way as very many people anymore. I went on a bit of a journey of freeing myself of the whole conditioned existence and experiencing who we are beyond all of that and seeing the world differently. So for me, this world is a place where people are here as souls to learn. And most have forgotten that. Most have lost that connection. And regaining it is to me fundamental to somebody living the life they came here to live. Without it, they'll live a conditioned existence that society asks them to. And so my whole life is focused on inviting people to remember who they really are. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the moments where I see somebody stepping fully into themselves. And I had one of those moments just a few days ago where a young woman I've worked with for years finally stepped out and came out of the shadows, and it was absolutely beautiful to see. Um, and for me, that's what it's about: is each of us remembering who we really are and coming into the world as that. And so I feel that we've lost that. as a society, as a whole, as a world, as a humanity. And I feel that the world events right now are reminders to us. Like for me, the pandemic, for example, is a reminder of how far out of harmony with nature we've become. We, as a race, seem to be trying to control it, dominate it, rather than live in harmony with it and be part of it because we actually are part of it. And I feel like it's a very, very strong reminder that what we're doing to this planet can't continue. If we keep going the way we are and the way we treat our environment, it's not going to last for forever. It's not going to last maybe for our kids or our grandkids or their kids' generation. And so that's starting to get close to home. So for me, the pandemic is a bit of a wake up call to everyone, to all of us. And then it seems to be touching some particular nations quite a lot, such as America and Brazil and the UK. And I feel that those countries are examples of capitalism where the people who are leading it tend to put economic values ahead of humanity, is my sense anyway. I could be totally wrong. And I don't feel there's a coincidence there. And this whole movement that is now going worldwide, the Black Lives Matter movement, for me is a symptom of a broken society. And it's not just America. It's, to me, the whole democratic system being led by people who are lost in their own agendas and not thinking in terms of harmony and love of all, is leading us as a race down a very dangerous path, I feel. So for me, it's all symptoms of a broken society that has an opportunity to do some deep, deep reflection and choose how we wish to go forward.
Yeah, I feel very similarly, and and we've talked a lot about this, but the people who are listening probably have no earthly idea what we're talking about in some regards. Um, Although I've been surprised, like the ones who've been tuning in, I've have surprised me quite often that they like I don't expect to have this conversation outside of certain groups, right? Like I don't expect to be um, I don't expect to be in a conversation and have that to dive into this really deep, vulnerable place where we can share authentically very often. And I've been constantly surprised at the conversations that have come out of these videos, out of these interviews, even on the one day stage. Um, so I feel like I should kind of back up a little bit and drop some assumptions around that. Um, but you mentioned this is something we've talked about quite a bit, but you mentioned it, the letting go of the what society tells people to live. Um, what was that journey like for you?
Wow, okay, that's a big question. Um, for me, it all began about 18, 19 years ago when I had what's called a wake up call. And I was on a trip in the outback of Australia when I was alone in the desert with just my girlfriend, and there was no sound, and everything inside me fell silent. And it was an amazingly peaceful, beautiful place. And I knew I had to get back to there. So I was in the corporate world at the time, management role, and 2 months later, I'd quit my job. And I was looking for a way to basically be happy. I wanted to know what happiness was, and I wanted to know what love was because I was totally confused. So it was a pretty simple start for me, but it pretty soon started to go off in different directions after trying the standard career counseling and being told you could do any one of these 5 careers and you'll be happy. And I dabbled in each of the 5. I explored them, and it's like, no, actually, my problem's deeper than a job. So then I went into my dark night. and I had what I call my a year-long summer of discontent, where I couldn't find anybody in my world, which was Vancouver at the time, to help me understand what was happening. And then it got rather mystical. Um, the things that came into my life had me living in a Tibetan Bon monastery a few months after I'd given up on trying to find a way back into the Western world. And my journey just went from there. It became one of learning to tap into and hear what I call my inner guide. And that took me a while. And I learned that I could trust it, that it knew the events that needed to come into my life. It knew what I needed to learn to free myself of a conditioned existence. And so that became my 24-hour day job, was to free myself of the false. And it was an alternating journey of euphoria, pain, and deep depression, a lot of loneliness, many lonely days. I spent 3 years essentially not talking to anyone unless I had to order a meal or something. Um, yeah, it was quite a lonely journey. And I didn't have anyone to turn to for most of it. Um, and I just wandered the globe, and I just went wherever I felt drawn. And I was incredibly blessed. I worked with a enlightened master and the Tibetan traditions, and yeah, many others along the way came along and kept putting me back, pointing me back. And eventually, um, I had the journey that one would call dying before you die, where the false self died away. And also the journey of merging back into what I call source. And for 2 years, I felt out of place in this world. I didn't know how to talk, didn't know who to talk to. And so I was living a very simple life, and I stopped. I stopped trying to accomplish anything, trying to do anything. I just essentially stopped. And then different doors started to open, and I feel like for the last 7 years, I've simply been listening to that inner guide and just going wherever it asks me to go, speaking whatever it asks me to speak, and living a life free of any conditioned self and free of any attachment to any society or world. I feel like I know who we are. Well, I know who I am, and it's not a person. So I live a very peaceful, beautiful, unknown existence. Getting to that point of seeing through the illusion wasn't easy, though. It took a lot of hard work, and it was inner work. And I feel that it's getting easier by the day. For example, I learned to do energy reading in a 9 month course 16 years ago. That course can now be taught in 4 hours. It's something is shifting, I feel, energetically in the world that is making it much more um, accessible for people to wake up, to remember that they're not the conditioned being that they're taught to believe they are. And I feel it's time. I feel like everything that we're it's happening around the world is just further um, invitations to wake up. And to me, there's nothing else in this world that's worth doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in alignment with all of that. Um, what you said about things speeding up definitely hits like that feels very pertinent and relevant in this moment. What took 9 months then took 4 hours, and not too long ago it took me, well, not me, but you know, I had a friend learn how to do it in about 20 minutes. Um, and that was pretty wild. That experience of just like dropping in, and she got it. Like she got it like that. It was amazing to watch. Um, and I do get that trust. It does feel like that to me is the most important thing. Um, and it was actually probably one of the most difficult for me to accept. Um, I know we had some pretty tense times about it at the farm. This moment keep like it comes back. It's back right now. Like I'll just give a little background for everyone else watching. So we were planning a trip to Peru together, and you know, me, you, and 8 or 9 other people who all went to Peru to go sit with Sean and Javier down there and sit in the medicine circle. And there was this mushroom class that I kept getting drawn to go to. And I was so scared of disappointing you and everyone at the farm. Like, because I knew like this was $50 that I was spending on this class that I could have been paying you to go to Peru and the money that I owed to go to Peru basically. And yet like I felt so strongly to go. And I remember walking for like 3 hours. Like it wasn't that long. I don't keep track of time that well. Probably an hour. Hitchhiking to get to the other side of the island to go to this course, and no one was picking me up. And the longer I walked, like the more scared I got. Like it just kept getting deeper and deeper. Like, am I really doing the right thing here? Like, what's really going on here? Is this really where I'm supposed to be? And every single time I asked that question, like I just felt this really deep calm that was just centered, and that just felt like the yes to me. And so I kept walking, and finally, like I got to the point where I realized that it didn't matter anymore. Like there was like it didn't matter whether I went or did not. Like it felt like everything was going to work out either way, and this fear that I had was really based on this idea that like I was scared of conflict. I was scared of actually talking to you about it and talking to the rest of the people at the farm about it. And I had this realization that like I have to trust this first. Like it doesn't matter what anyone else says, no matter how much I like respect them, no matter how much I love them. Um, like doing anything out of obligation, doing anything out of fear of disappointing someone else, um, only led to more suffering. And once I realized that, literally like 2 minutes later, a car came and picked me up, and I ended up at the class, and I met someone who then like introduced me to a friend and got a job, and that was how I ended up paying for the whole trip. Um, and even with that experience, there were still like up until about 3 months ago, there were still multiple moments where like I was constantly scared to trust. And it finally broke with that conversation we had about death and what is death. And even though I had like logically understood that death is an illusion, it hadn't really sunk in until we had that conversation. And once I saw um, that really what I was scared of was the unknown, and that I'm living in the unknown every single second, it didn't really like nothing else matter anymore. And it's just been back to trusting that guide, like you said. Um, that's what the guide feels like to me, but I don't think I've ever asked you, what does it feel like to you? Like, what is your experience with that?
It's changed. Um, at first, it was like this connection that would just come through. Be like, I'll use Bruce to talk about the conditioned being. Bruce would kind of just feel this other message coming through, and it would come through a dream or poetry or just a strange inspiration, and I would just know it. But it shifted over time to the realization that I wasn't Bruce. And at that point, what I was trusting was more my experience of me than Bruce. Like that inner guide is me, not Bruce. And so it completely changed at that point, and life became very different. The mind body that people see was something I was seeing now. I was observing my own mind and body going through life and seeing it get sad or seeing it get happy and learning from it. And so at that point, um, there was no need to feel that connection to the inner guide or however you phrased it. I was living it. And so there's no effort anymore to try and connect to anything. Um, the connection is just made. I live from that space. So when I allow myself to just simply free flow talk, it's that part of me talking, not the mind body talking. For example, I tell people when I sit down and run a retreat, I'll start every session with, and now we're going to, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to say. And I'll often do that with conversations when I work with people one on one as well. Because I've come to feel that Bruce is a tool. He has no inherent value. He's not going to do anything worthwhile in this world. But the energy of the inner guide is love. And love, I feel, can add value. But Bruce is a useful tool. He allows me to interact with others. He allows me to take a group to Peru. He allows me to follow through on what I feel drawn to. So he's a beautiful tool. He's just a tool. And I loved your story. I feel I have heard it before, but for me, it was a beautiful story of how it's about the journey. It's not the destination. It's not about getting to the course and taking the course. It's about you going through the inner journey of, oh, should I go? Should I not go? And that whole story told me was beautiful because that's what life is. It's not about taking a mushroom course. It's about your inner reaction to the possibility of taking it. It's funny, you know about that we're working on this initiative right now to create a more loving um, community. And what I'm seeing is that the impact it's having on everyone involved in it is incredible. And it's the same story. I don't feel it's about getting to the mushroom class. I don't feel it's about creating that loving community. It's about what's happening to every individual on the way there. And for me, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I had a realization when I joined this campaign. Like, Matthew didn't want to join the campaign. Matthew was like arguing against it and giving me all kinds of reasons not to join this campaign. But like holding that possibility literally made my heart sing. And so I joined. And the way I've come to talk about it now is like there was no reason why I joined. The reasons become apparent as I go through whatever is happening with the campaign. And it's been conversations. It's been the like really deep, amazing conversations that have happened with the people I'm working with, that have um, brought I feel like brought me closer to myself in each and every moment, and opened up new possibilities for them all at the same time. Um, so like I'm pretty done looking for reasons to do anything. It's um, it's much more fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's much more fun to just let things happen and like see what comes up. Um, Kind of like this call, like this conversation. I don't know what we're going to talk about.
The one thing that seems to come up for almost everybody who sort of talks the way you do is the fear of how am I going to eat? How am I going to get
Mhm.
shelter? How am I going to feed my family? And because if I just trust, well, what's going to happen?
Yeah,
And what I found is that those basic needs, food, water, shelter, I was drawn to ways to make sure those were provided. So I feel that if somebody is able to just say, okay, I'm just going to trust me, that inner guide, and live, then yes, part of living is making sure you take care of um, body. And it happens, but that's part of trusting. I feel
yeah,
that the greatest enemies that humanity has to overcome, I feel there's two, and one of them is fear. There's so many times I hear people go, and what about this, and what about that? And they're speaking from fear. Fear is what prevents people from trusting. Trusting is the antidote to fear. And to me, there's two, fear being one, greed being the other. To me, those are the two enemies of mankind.
mm. Fear I definitely resonate with. To me, greed is just another form of fear. Like it seems to come from fear.
No way. Yeah. In many cases, I do feel it comes from fear. I need to be able to provide myself and my family, so I have to accumulate. But I also meet some who are have a lot of pride in what they've accumulated, and they're doing it for to keep up with the Joneses, is an expression I've heard. It's what you should do. So they get to a certain point where what you're describing has been taken care of, but they keep going. And so to me, there's other fear is a big driver of greed, but there are other ones too.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that.
And a very wise being once told me that no matter where you go in this world, greed will find you. It may not find you in your lifetime, but it will in your kids and your grandkids. And I've traveled and lived in different parts of the world, like Peru and Mexico and Guatemala and India. And I've seen what happens when the Western mindset of accumulation and greed appears. Within 10, 12 years, the indigenous culture is gone. And everybody there is all about greed too. And yeah, I can see why humanity is so lost.
And
That's
yet
how I feel
somehow,
though.
yeah, I'm with you. And yet somehow it feels okay too. Like it doesn't feel like it's a problem. It doesn't feel like it's a bad thing necessarily. It's a painful thing. It hurts. Like it hurts to witness. It hurts to be around. It hurts to be with. Um, but to me, for some reason, it doesn't
It's
feel like it's
extremely
a bad
painful.
thing. Yeah.
It's really painful for me. Oh, I went into a mine in Potosi in Bolivia, and it was a silver mine, and it's been running for 500 odd years, and it's what funded the Spanish Empire apparently. And upon coming out, we were talking to the guy, the ex-miner who took us in, and he said the life expectancy of a miner is 35. They start in their late teens. He says they're willing to do it because they can make $1,000 a month, and that will set up their families for generations in that part of the world. So 35 of the 40 smelters that take that silver were Canadian at the time. So the silverware I grew up with on my table came at the cost of Bolivians dying at 35. It's the way I felt. And I've got a dozen of those stories from around the world. The
Wow.
lifestyle that my tribe this time around is choosing to live is being lived at the cost of people around the world. And that doesn't sit well with me. So I don't use words like bad or good because I don't feel that that's what it's about. Life is an opportunity to learn. Are we being loving or aren't we being loving? And if the impact we're having on people on the other side of the world is to cut their lives short, then I don't feel I'm being loving. But that's pretty heavy.
I
For me, it's very
um,
simple. Very simple. Wake up.
Absolutely. And it's a choice. Um, I don't. We had a conversation about this in the kitchen one day actually. Um, I for a long time did not recognize that that choice existed or that I was capable of making it. And I feel that most people are in that kind of, it felt like being blind. Like it felt like I once was blind, but now I see. Like that, it feels like that is the definition of amazing grace to me. Um, and I know in my experience, it was the sheer misery that I felt that finally woke me up to that choice and recognizing that I was miserable. But with everything that's shifting right now, with the way time seems to be accelerating, there's this question that comes of what if there's a faster way to demonstrate that that choice exists to someone who doesn't recognize it?
Yeah. From my travels, the term wake up call is pretty common. Historically, it's taken some kind of wake up call for people to realize that this life they're living doesn't work for them. Is that, and I've talked to quite a few people about, do you need to have a wake up call? And is there a faster way? Do you have to lose a partner or a business or see through the illusion temporarily? Or does something grandiose have to happen to realize there is a choice? And my answer is no. I have two little boys right now, and in observing them, I feel they know. And I feel that that's the case for many young kids. They know, but we condition it out of them. We teach them what this world is, what we think it is. And they become lost and they become disconnected from who they are. So, one way is don't disconnect them in the first place. But that only works for the very young. What do we do for everybody else? I don't have an answer. I keep inviting people to remember there is a choice. But yeah, I feel like you're hitting something is that up until now, unless people are suffering, they haven't made that choice without a wake up call. The suffering is their wake up call. And I get the feeling that that's kind of what all this pandemic is about. That this turmoil with racism is about is about um, a more global attempt to say to everybody, enough. There's another way. But if you know of a quick way, please share it.
No, it's it does seem to be happening faster naturally, um, and it seems to come with just inviting others into that space of authenticity and vulnerability with gratitude. And gratitude feels really important in that conversation in that realm. Um, but still, it feels like they're not going to get it unless they're ripe, unless they're ready. And I know I didn't for years until one day it was just, oh, oh. um, and it's like it is still a choice that I have to make. Like it doesn't come naturally all the time yet. Um, and I do still get caught in moments of like feeling overwhelmed and scared. Um, but it's less and less every day. And it's easier and easier to trust every day. And the more that trust comes up, and the more often I live in that trust and exist in that trust, the less often the fear seems to be present. And even when the fear does come up now, it's not as overpowering as it has been. Like it's been gradually like becoming less of overwhelming and um, visceral experience and more of a oh, okay, there's fear there. That's interesting. What's going on? Um, like there's one. It's a small one, but it's been coming much more often in the last week or so. Um, I felt drawn to get involved in a business, and it's typically something that I would never do. It's a multi-level marketing thing, but it's all about travel, and the incentive is like I only make money when I'm saving other people money, um, and like my heart said yes to it, and like my mind still has all these reasons that it comes up with, like this is ridiculous, and every time like I start to get depressed, and this is part of where I haven't been on the calls with you guys over the last few weeks, because every time I feel drawn to reach out to someone to actually talk about the business specifically, I get scared and I don't, and then I start to get depressed, and the depression builds until either I just shut it down and step back into trust, and by that point like the opportunity to talk to the person feels like it's past, but like it's still there, it's still present, no matter, like there's no shutting it down completely, there's just kind of like stepping outside of it for a little bit. um, and so that is like just an example of a little fear that's still present, like I'm scared to reach out and invite people into this, because of the context that I have in my mind around what it is kind of what it feels like. Um, and there's even a little bit of shame there around the fact that I'm participating in a multi-level marketing thing. Like it feels like a dirty thing almost that I'm doing this. But like when I really sit with it, I get a yes. And so I feel like what is coming out of this kind of rambling thing is identifying fear and then identifying the belief that is creating that fear. Like that's something that I learned from you, and it has served me incredibly well. But how did that come about in your life? Where did that start? What happened there?
I'm not totally clear on your question. What are you asking?
What what happened that demonstrated to you what fear really is?
Oh, so many things. Um, Fear bondage. um, Leaving the corporate world was hard because everybody in my social circle thought I was nuts. So there was a lot of fear of becoming isolated. And then I got drawn to go to India, and I was terrified of going to India. Um, but I landed, and within a month, I was studying in that monastery, in a monastery. That was one way, is that I had reached a point in my journey where I was telling myself I would rather die than go back to the corporate world. And I absolutely meant it. The pain of living a conditioned life had become so great for me that I would rather have died than go back to that. I was going to find another way or I was out. So I had a pretty strong determination to face any fear that arose. So even if I was absolutely petrified of doing something, I would do it anyway. Um, for example, just totally out there, I was going into one of the pyramids in Egypt to do a ceremony with a bunch of people. And as we got to the entrance of the pyramid, the fear that came over me was so strong, my body literally spun around and took 2 steps in the other direction before I could even come back into place. The fear was just incredible. So I stopped, turned around, walked in, and as soon as I was through the entrance, the fear was gone.
Mm.
And that to me is an example of how often I would just face a fear and it would be gone. And that's one easy way to deal with fear, but that doesn't work if you have a fear of heights. So the other way I discovered was, yeah, if you can find the lie underneath it, you can shed that fear. For example, many, if not most fears are based on the fear of death. So you can get to the root of eliminating fear from your life if you can overcome the fear of death. And that happened to me a few years ago. And as an example, I had a fear of heights all my life till I got over the fear of death. And then I had no longer had a fear of heights. And death as a fear is based on the false belief that we are the body. We're not. We're eternal beings. Body's just a suit we're currently wearing. So if you can get over fear of death, that cuts things off at the root. So my journey with fear was really started off as just, damn the torpedoes, I'm going to face it. And it soon became a realization that all fear is based on false beliefs, all of them. And if you can find the lie underneath that lying of fear, you can shed it. And if you can free yourself of fear, oh my God, life is different. So I guess that was my journey with it.
Yeah, I feel very similarly, and it's funny, this one particular fear, it feels so insignificant, like on the surface, but it feels like it goes deep. Um, and it's connected to shame somehow, which is one of those things I normally don't feel shame. Shame, like, to me is this really, it's a game. Um, and I generally don't choose to play it. Um, and yet there are still moments where this controls me, and it's very strange. This may be one that I just have to face. I just have to start calling people. Just rip the band-aid off, basically. Because yeah, that has
There's one
happened.
thing that helped me with that. Sorry, you were still going.
No, go ahead.
There was one thing that really helped me with that, and it was something a woman, wise teacher of mine, once said. Was she told me about inappropriate responsibility, and what she was getting at was that it's absolutely inappropriate to be responsible for the feelings of others, as long as I'm acting from a loving place.
Yeah.
So if I'm acting from that inner guide, that divine self, you get really upset with me, that's your issue, not mine. If I'm acting from my conditioned mind, trying to accomplish something, trying to convince you of something, trying to be right, or whatever, then I am responsible for the impact on you. So to me, it's very, very simple. If you trust your inner guide, you live by it, you live as it, you will never have to feel ashamed again. And if you are feeling ashamed, then you have some healing to do.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there because it's coming. Feeling on your business opportunity, your multi level marketing, is you're still attached to that world and you have attachment to money and you feel that money can accomplish things.
Hmm.
And I feel that you're going to be pulled into that world until you free yourself of the attachment. And I don't feel it has anything to do with multi level marketing or business. I feel it has everything to do with what's going on inside you, just like your story of the mushroom class.
Yeah. Um, yeah, both of those are dead on. Especially the inappropriate or the say it one more time, the inappropriate responsibility. That
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not trusting that call, and I am scared of upsetting people. And that's not just about the business. Like the business is just what happens to be bringing up right now. That's one that's been with me for a long time, and it's been the source of a lot of things, including the mushroom class. Hmm.
Only take it resonates, but I feel what's really going on for you beyond just money, the broader picture, is you're having trouble letting go of your world, of the society you grew up in, of the capitalist world. I get the feeling that you feel it could be changed.
It's funny that doesn't come up with the campaign, but it comes up with the business. Um, yeah, that having money, having lots of money, which this business has the potential to do, to generate, would somehow enable me to create a bigger platform that could share whatever that would change people's hearts and minds. Hmm. Well, I wonder if I'm actually going to feel drawn to participate in the business anymore.
I feel that your desire to change people's hearts and minds is what this is about at a bigger picture level than the money.
Yeah.
When I chose to leave the monastery, His Holiness left me with parting words. And parting words from being like that are ones I pay attention to. And he said, never forget that everyone is exactly where they need to be. Everybody to me has a journey, and they're here to learn what they came here to learn. When they're ripe, to use your earlier terms, they'll be ripe. Till they're ripe, all I feel I can do is keep sharing that there is another choice and love them. And when they choose to change their heart, be there.
Yeah. Who was it that said, I'm not okay and you're not okay, and that's okay?
I don't know.
I love that. And yeah, yeah. And again, it just comes back down to trust, like trusting that I will be, trusting that I always am. It's not even will be, it's that I always am in exactly the right place at the right time.
Exactly. If you follow that feeling, then you will be.
Mhm.
And I've learned it. I don't have a clue why. Like it's called the unknown for a reason. If I'm drawn into a business, I'd go into it, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be because of the business. Maybe because there's someone there I need to learn something from, or they need to learn something from me. Who knows? But I've learned that my mind's reasons for doing things are almost invariably incorrect.
Mhm. Yeah, and going into the campaign, I didn't have reasons. Going into the business, I feel like there were. Actually, I know there were, and that's the difference. Hmm. Cool. Well, that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Um, Also, I still just really want a motorcycle. Like that's part of it too, if I'm being completely honest.
Too funny.
What can I say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go for it.
I we'll see what happens. I don't know that the business is the way that's going to happen. I do feel like it is. It could happen, and I don't feel anything like it. Like it feels very much like Peru
I have a
before
question for you, Matt.
Machu. Shoot,
Are you ripe?
yeah,
If you're ripe, drop desire.
yeah. If a motorcycle shows up, a motorcycle shows up. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, me, that's one desire. But there's a bigger one. The desire to change people's hearts and minds. That one I feel has been derailing you for years.
Mm. Particularly mom.
Let yourself shine. Wow. I don't know. It's just coming. Just let yourself shine. I don't feel like your life would change very much. All that would change would be the pain that you feel inside when people don't get it or their hearts don't change or you feel like you're not doing enough or whatever goes through you. You're doing the wrong thing. All of that will fall away. What you do may not change very much. All that really happens is who's doing it changes.
It's funny that brings up the conversation we had years ago at one of the retreats about what is the masculine energy and the feminine energy, and how can they support each other, like from love as love. And one of the girls there said, talking about what masculine energy is it feels like that rock, that platform to stand on so that she can shine. And immediately, and I still feel this so strongly. Um, that platform is unconditional love. Is just loving without condition, without any ego, without anything else. It's just love. And I've had this experience with a woman I met recently where um, we seem to be leapfrogging each other. Where um, I will, not me, but like that bigger me will be present, and then Matthew will come in, And when Matthew comes in, or when like, you know, something gets said from Matthew or by Matthew and not me, like it just immediately triggers her. And it's been this really amazing way for me to just see all these little things that I'm still holding on to, that I'm not letting go of, and let them go and then come back. And so like it feels like we've just been stepping up. Where like I hold this space for a little while and she shines a light on what's happening in my head. And, you know, I may fall away for a little bit, but when I come back, whatever she shines a light on, if I've been able to work through it and let it go, then I'm here now. And so like she gets to step up a little bit higher. And then like the process repeats, and it just feels like we've just been leapfrogging, 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 you know, just going up and up and up. Um, and there's this realization that like I can be that for me too. Like I don't, it doesn't have to happen with someone else. Like it can just happen with me, as me, just being love. And that's like, that's what feels like balance to me now.
Yes, I feel that too. And there's a realization that hit me that kind of almost ended that game. And it's that I can't love. I can't love another.
Yeah.
I can be love. I can allow love to flow through. I can allow a loving foundation to be in place. But if I come back into being Bruce and try and love another, there's no love present anymore.
Mhm.
I feel like that's actually, it came up last night talking to a friend. I feel like that's one of the greatest traps that humanity is caught in. The quote he showed me was one that ended with, "This is my true path of love." Well, that whole quote's an oxymoron. If you're being me, you're being the conditioned self. There's no love flowing through. You're in the conditioned self. But I feel like so many in this world are looking to love and be loved. And to me, that's a beautiful thing because at the end of the day, what they're really looking for is what's deep inside them, hidden beneath the conditioning. When they stop looking to be loved from outside, they can do what you're saying you can do. You can turn inwards and give that to yourself.
I can be that.
You don't need another.
Yeah.
You can be that. And when you start to be that, then that whole looking for it outside of yourself is gone. And the whole conditional love, unconditional love game goes too.
Mhm. Yeah. It's just love. And not even like that doesn't even
Yeah,
feel adequate to describe what it is. It just is.
exactly.
Mm.
But yes, I did go through the same game of what you're describing, and then being able to give that to myself. And then as the self started to dissolve more and more, still some there, started to dissolve more and more, the game ended. This is a warning I give about self-love. Self-love is accepting oneself, going inwards. But self-love is a sacred fire. If you practice self-love, it will destroy the self. You can just look, but that's who you are, kind of. The fun part is the small game.
It just starts
Yeah,
all
it's fun.
over again.
It does. A whole new game.
A whole new game. I never got that term a sacred fire until a couple of years ago when uh, I don't remember how it came up, but it was just like there was something that got pointed out. I think it was Chris that actually pointed it out to me. And like it burned. Like my entire body was like literally got heated up, like I was sweating, and it was just like it burned. Um, and I still feel that from time to time, where like there's this realization of something. I feel it now actually. It feels like there's something burning away. Like I actually feel pretty hot and a little bit sweaty. Um, I like the only I don't even know what brought that up. But what feels present with it now is that like just an invitation to put out there just to not shy away from that to anyone who's watching. Um, let the fire burn. If you're feeling it, let it burn. Um, what's on the other side has been a profoundly poignant experience for me.
Yeah, I feel that too. Let it burn. And the sacred fire will free you. Like the phoenix rising from the ashes is the analogy, but that comes. And one of the things I found on my journey is there were some really, really painful times. Like I spent a month in India in a deep, deep depression, barely able to function. And one of the things that I have felt all along is that this journey is one I have to take, but I do not have to do it alone. No one can do my journey for me, but others can be there to support me. And one of the reasons why I started doing retreats and then we created this space we live in is because I feel that when people are facing those deepest parts and the burning is strong, it's nice to be in a place where you're held.
It is.
And it's one of the things I feel we've lost in this world is the ability to hold people when the illusions are burning away. And the other side of that illusion is the essence of who they really are. We don't have many places in this world where people are held right through that process. I couldn't find them. They're probably out there. And I'm hoping, and I feel that there's more and more appearing every day because things are accelerating. When the burning is bright, the burning is strong. Remember, you're not alone.
No, you are not. Um, that feels like a lovely segue to start talking about the community and the farm and what you're launching right now with the Love Based Society, if you're open to share.
I have no idea. Um, yeah, I'm totally open to sharing. Um, I started doing retreats many years ago, and I did them with my partner. And she and I, after one retreat, said we can't keep doing this because what we're finding is we were creating a very loving space, that was allowing people to sink deep in. And invariably, people would ask, where can we go where we can just live in this always? And I was always on call. Like people could call me 24 hours a day afterwards to talk about it. But there was at least one person, usually more from every retreat, who needed to go somewhere for a couple of months to really go through something and to be in a place where they would just be supported, not, not told what to do or how to live, but be supported in facing themselves. So that's where the farm came from. So she and I bought a property and we created a little farm. And the farm is essentially a place for people to come and go through the sacred fire in a supportive environment. So that's what we've been living for the last few years. And over the winter, I was feeling like something's brewing, something's coming, and something is being birthed from inside me. And it was a feeling that it's time for me to be a part of creating an alternative to the conditioned existence. And to me, the alternative to a conditioned existence is a love-based existence, meaning that you live as the essence of who you are rather than the conditioned being. And then the pandemic hit, and the two combined, the feeling that was coming from inside me and that coming from outside me, just felt, okay, it's time. So I reached out to a number of people that I worked with for a number of years, like yourself, and said, I just invited everyone to get together on a Zoom call and chat about it. How do you feel about an alternative to a conditioned existence? And so, yeah, for the last 3 months, I guess, we've been meeting every 2 weeks to explore the creation of an alternative. And what's been beautiful for me is that that journey has resulted in profound shifts in people. Just a few days ago, there was one of the women she led something for the whole group. And it was absolutely beautiful to me because I've known her for about 7 years, 8 years. And I've known that she had the gift inside her to do this kind of thing. But she didn't have that self confidence to do it. And she did it. And she was just shining. And it was absolutely beautiful. So for me, if nothing else comes from what we're creating, just that it's allowed those 10 or 11 to step out of their shadow and start to really shine in the world, that makes it worthwhile for me. More than worthwhile. But anyway, I was shown many years ago what is known in the shamanic world as communities of the future. Many have had it, I was told, including the shaman I worked with at the time. He got it in the 80s. And it's a vision of how humanity can shift from a conditioned existence to a love-based one. And I don't know if it's time. I don't know if people are ready. I don't know if people are right. Because it's up to each individual to make that choice. There's no belief system or guru to follow in this kind of model. It's about finding that love in essence of who you really are inside. So if people are ripe and ready, they can be supported in that journey. But if they're not ripe and ready, this is going nowhere. So I guess for me, what this is all about is creating an invitation and then just allowing that invitation to be there. And when people feel that, yes, I'm going to step into the sacred fire and I'm going to be part of creating a love-based world, or a love-based, or a love-based tiny little village, then we start.
Would you just share that vision, the vision of the communities of the future?
Yeah, I can share that. What I was shown, it started with an image of a pebble dropping into a pond, and splashing and then ripples going out. So that's the visual image of what these communities would look like. Where the pebble splashes is called a pulse of love. And what that's about is two or three, possibly more, individuals who are no longer living identified with the conditioned self. They're allowing the essence of who they truly are. They're allowing love to flow through. Most of the time, if not all the time. So those two or three are holding what's called a pulse of love. And that pulse of love is the heart of the community. And then individuals get attracted to that energy and start their own journey, their own inner journey of breaking free of their conditioned existence and remembering who they really are, waking up, or whatever term is being used by you. And that's the first ripple, is the individuals who are making that choice that you talked about. And they have the support of the two or three in the middle. They have to go on their own journey. No one's going to do it for them, but they're supported. And when enough of those individuals decide that they're ready to come together in a physical community, then they do. And that's when the second ripple forms. And that's where you have a physical community. It is essentially, it's made up of those who hold the intention to remember who they are, to become love. And then everything that's done within that community is done from that space, from that loving space. And everybody is supporting everybody else because we're all here to go on our own journeys. None of us are perfect. We're not, this isn't going to start when everybody is perfect and enlightened. No, it's going to start when people make that choice. And yes, they got a journey to go on. They may feel drawn to ride a motorcycle. Who knows what they'll feel drawn to? They got to have their journey. And it's about supporting them and having the journey so that they can free themselves of the false. So that's what it's about. There's quite a bit more to the vision actually in terms of the values that are held. It's about a co-creation between humanity, nature, and the spirit realms. So all three come together in a co-creative way. It's a Trinity is a big part of it. It's a trinity of Father, Son, human being, and Mother Earth, because the human being is the one that embodies all three. Light, physical comes together in the human being. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than what I just described, but simplistically, that's it.
No, thank you for sharing that. It's funny you haven't actually talked about the Trinity before with me. Like I've never heard you say that. Um,
Yeah, every level is a trinity, so I'll quickly do that then. The love is the trinity of Father, Son, Mother Earth, and human being. The individuals are working at the level of the trinity of mind, body, soul. And then the community is the trinity of human beings, nature, and spirit beings. So all levels are about creating a harmonious trinity.
there's always a question like this, and I know it's always a question of what it's about, but like that is something that I've observed outside of my experiences with you guys in the community is the power of the Trinity. Like even when I first um, was on Hawaii and I met Harry, the Kahuna Lomi Lomi, who kind of in many ways introduced me to a lot of this stuff. Um, One of the very first exercises we did with him was he set us up into Trinity, into triads, and it was giver, receiver, and observer. And we would go through and partake in each one of those roles in the exercise. And The observer was actually the one that felt the most powerful to me, like it felt the most impactful, is just to witness what was happening between the giver and the receiver and the love and the healing that was happening there. Um, like it still blows me away to this day. I get teary eyed just talking about it. Um, do you have a sense of what that's about? Like what the Trinity is about?
I'm no, because I'm not a fan of my mind. It's a useful tool. What is my sense? What do I feel
Yeah.
eternity is about?
What does it
Well,
feel?
just what came to me when you were talking about the triad that you talked about, what came to me was you were describing life. Like there's Bruce and Matt interacting, giving and receiving, and there's the observer. And existing as the observer is to observe the interaction between Bruce and Matt, and the whole time looking at where is Bruce falling from grace? Where is Bruce not being loving in this interaction? And the observer is just observing the interaction. And for me, what you described is life for me.
Yeah,
But that wasn't really your question. What was my sense of the Trinity?
that was the answer though. Um, yeah. With that, what comes is participating in the exercise in that way was an invitation to always be the observer, which is love, which is existence, which is whatever word you want to use to describe it. It is what is.
It is the way I feel, yes. And then observing Bruce functioning in the world is to see when Bruce falls from grace,
Mm-hmm.
to see when Bruce interacts in a non loving way with an agenda from shame, whatever it is, and learning from that fall from grace so that Bruce doesn't do that the next time.
Yeah, because every time I fall from grace, that's when either I hurt someone else or I get hurt. Um, and it doesn't feel particularly loving to perpetuate pain if there's an option not to.
Yes, I feel all of what you're saying. And if we were perfect, we wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
To me, we're going to fail. So there's going to be times that I'm going to fall from grace. And you can be really mad at me for it, or you can love me, accept me where I'm at, and support me in freeing myself of that source of that failure. I choose the latter approach. I choose to have compassion for people and accept where they're at. We're all going to fail. That's okay. As long as we learn from our failures. Where for me, it gets a little bit painful to be around someone is if they have no interest in learning from their failures and they're just constantly harming others. For me, that's just not an environment I would choose to be part of.
Yeah, I. It's funny. I don't actually find myself in those situations that much anymore, um, with a couple of fairly big exceptions. Uh, for the most part, even though I'm here, even though I'm in the midst of all this eruption that's happening, and heavily involved in a congressional campaign where people in it are still people, like they there's no concept of that choice that we talked about. Um, and yet, even my interactions with them, it's not very often where I find myself in a situation where they don't want to learn. And that's been really powerful. Like it's been a blast in some ways. I've been really enjoying it. Like it's been wonderful to witness. And there seems to be this process that's happening within me where, like, as I trust and as I go with what my inner guide, what I am really feeling drawn towards, it's like I'm weaving my way through those situations almost, um, and just showing up when there's opportunities to learn. And I haven't quite seen it that way until just now, but it feels like that's what Christ was talking about when he said, "Be in the world, but not of the world." Like that's what comes to mind for me about that. Um, and it's so like it's not even hard. It's like it's so easy. It's almost relaxing. Actually, it is relaxing. It's not almost. It totally is. It's the only times where at the end of the day, I feel exhausted or overwhelmed are when I have been not trusting.
Yeah, yeah, I feel all that. For me, being in the world, not of the world, I can't put myself in his shoes to know exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
For me, it feels that, well, His Holiness, the Mass I worked with, he told me there's nowhere to go and nothing to do. And he said that as the last words from the first time I left the monastery and I went back. There's nowhere to go and nothing to do. And I was like, no, I gotta go. I gotta go do this. But I kind of get it now. There's nowhere to go and nothing to do. So for me, if the doer is present, the doer is going to work on the campaign, then nothing of value is going to happen.
Yep.
You're in the world. You're of the world as well. But when the doer's not present, you're just physically here, and the doer's not present. You're not off the world anymore. For me, that's how I see it. I
Mhm.
love the way Lao Tzu put it. Many know how useful it is to be useful. Few know how useful it is to be useless. I feel that Bruce is completely and totally useless in this world. When I say I stopped years ago, I stopped doing. There's nothing to do. There's no reason to play the games of the conditioned existence. I don't feel. So to me, what you're describing is you have the opportunity to practice going to this campaign to simply be there and allow whatever interaction is meant to happen without trying, just allowing life to flow, allowing the Tao.
Yeah. Yeah. There was There was a funny moment last night. I know it was 2 nights ago. Again, time, not something I pay much attention to. There was a very frustrating conversation that people were having about, and I wasn't frustrated by it, but like I could tell they were getting frustrated um, about setting up a social media group on Facebook, and it just kept going back and forth and back and forth, and I didn't see what it was about until finally I just had this little impulse to just pull one of the people aside into a separate chat and start talking to her. And it turned out that she didn't want this particular thing to happen because of an experience she had where she watched someone just get brutally insulted and there was nothing she could do to stop it. And it just was so painful for her to witness. And she just did not want to have to witness that again. And I totally get that. I absolutely get that. And what came out was kind of what we were talking about earlier about um, in our inappropriate responsibility. You know, people are going to choose what they're going to choose, and it's how we choose to respond to it that defines us. Do we choose to respond from Matthew, from that ego, from that trigger place, from that pain, from that fear, or can I be the observer? And I realized I was just using the word we, and that does not feel appropriate. But so I can be the observer. I can choose to react from my pain, and so it was at that point. It was just really simple, and it was just okay. Well, let's set up a framework, acknowledging that this is a possibility, and offering people a choice. And it was that simple, and everything flowed from there. um, and the whole situation, like where it had felt really tense and frustrating and like really red before, it just kind of smoothed out into this really beautiful just flow of like just light blue. It was quite, it was really lovely to witness. um, but like you were saying, like that could not have happened if I was trying, if I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I had become very aware when Matthew was interacting, especially with the campaign, because I can feel like I can see when things are starting to get frustrating. I can feel that frustration building, and if Matthew speaks, frustration gets even stronger. If I speak, it smooths out,
Sounds pretty darn simple to me.
right?
One of those things, simple to say, not simple to do.
No, no, not at all. Um, I am noticing the time. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. Are you okay on time? How's Amsterdam?
Yeah. I set aside 2 hours. I will just say that there's a storm just rolled in here, and we're on satellite internet, so I've noticed it's cut out twice.
Okay.
Um, Storms can affect my internet signal,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm okay for now.
Okay. Um, yeah, just let me know if something comes up and you need to go. I can close real quick and we can, because uh, we've, for everyone who's watching, we've set aside 2 hours for this, but we may or may not use it all. Um, is there anything else that's coming up for you right now? Is there anything that you would like to share? Anything present that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I guess a few things come. Um, One is that analogy we use of the observer. One of the things that was coming to me was to remind myself and others that silence can speak, and that the observer isn't solely about observing, it's primarily about observing. But at some point, it's allowing love to come through Bruce into the world. And joy is something we haven't touched on. And I feel joy is such a almost forgotten topic in this whole journey. It's so serious. You got to face your anger and your frustration, and your depression and your pride. And one of the things I found though was that there's a quote that actually turned out to be true for me. It was, when the mind falls silent, joy pokes its head out to see what's going on. And that was my experience. I was a miserable git for a lot of my life. But as the conditioned self started to fall away and there was more moments of silence, I found that joy is actually a state of being that can be there even if whatever's on the surface, even depression, joy can still be the underlying feeling. And I feel like that's something to remember, is that this is may feel sometimes like a joyless journey, but it's actually a journey to joy. When I was living in that monastery, I went to dinner with His Holiness and all the senior monks, and I thought it was going to be this really serious event. Never laughed at any dinner so hard in all my life. Those monks knew how to have fun. Yeah, it was quite an eye opener. Yeah, joy. Joy is a state of being. Anyway, I don't know why that was coming up, but yeah, I feel like sometimes we forget that we forget to smile, and then the other thing that was coming to me was re-engage, Matthew. I feel that when you you allow yourself to be pulled into the world of something like a political campaign or a multi-layered marketing campaign, you disconnect from those who are working on loving and supporting each other and becoming loving. You disconnect from your support network, I feel. And maybe it's shame that makes you do that. But I would invite you to stay engaged right through it all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hopped on the call last Sunday with Sarah and a few of the others and really appreciated it. But you're right, like there is this pulling away, like, and it's something I've been doing for a long time. Um, and I don't see it. Like I literally, that's one of those places where I still get unconscious. Um, the last call, the one that I missed Sunday, this most recent Sunday, um, I had every intention of being there. And by about 9 o'clock my time, and we're 3 hours difference period. Um, by about 9 o'clock my time, I had forgotten it was Sunday, and I went to bed. Like I went to bed like 10:30 that night because I was just exhausted and overwhelmed, and it was one of those days of a lot of doing. Yeah, I don't feel worthy. Like that's what comes up. Like I don't feel worthy to step into that space when I'm feeling that way.
Okay, if you're truly right, drop that whole worthy crap. Self worth. And what is the self that's supposed to be having this worth?
Yeah, it's such a silly game.
Just, it's one that has hurt so many people. People get so much suffering comes from that whole journey of pursuing self worth. It's not a funny thing, but you reach a point where it is. Drop it. Drop the game. Just be. If you're in a really tough place one day, be in a really tough place one day and share that. That's to me when it's most valuable to have people who can truly love you and listen, is to be there when you're in a tough place.
And that's a choice too.
It is. It's when the realization hits that Bruce is totally worthless. And I'm totally okay with that. This is a challenging one. This is one where I feel support is really important that we were talking about before. Face the pain of self worth. Um, it's something to be done with support, I feel, not on one's own. What we were talking about earlier, step into the fire. If you're going to step into the fire of self worth, don't do it alone because it's very hard on the false self.
Yeah, there is this belief that that's something that I have to do alone. I don't know where that came from. I don't like I have no earthly idea what the origin of that belief is. And I didn't even realize it was there until I just said it. Hmm. Okay. Well, seeing that, it feels easier. Like it all of a sudden just doesn't feel as heavy anymore.
Amazing how often when you become aware a belief is there, you just let it go.
Ah,
But for your audience, there's a few things where I would invite them to really put a support network in place before they face them. One is depression, and the other is self worth.
yeah, you guys don't have to go through it alone, as I have just realized. Um, and that is something that one day is slowly building up a support network to do, and also Bruce and the Love Based Society and the Way Home also exist for. Um, if you feel like reaching out, please, we're here. Um, the website is live now. Yes, it's okay to share it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'll
it's
put
live now.
awesome. So yeah, I'll put links to the website, the portal to the Love Based Society in the video description after we close out today, and you can find many on there who are standing by and are willing to support and to hold space for this very journey. Um, and there's a few of us here at One Day that we hold that same intention. So you're welcome to reach out to us as well if that feels more comfortable. Hmm. That feels fairly complete to me. How about you?
Yeah, that's to me too.
Uh, Bruce, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Um, guys, if you've enjoyed the conversation, there's more of them available. We're here. Just want to say I love you all and thank you so much for being here. And it's all going to be okay. Until next time, aloha.